Welcome to the Marshall Pruett Podcast, brought to you by Cooper Tires and the Justice Brothers. We have our man Zach Brown making his, 5th, 6th, 7th, something. Been a really regular and welcome guest here on our podcast, often speaking about IndyCar or Formula One. This time it is the big news we have been waiting for and hoping for. Confirmation of Arrow McLaren Racing SP, with the SP being Sam Schmidt and Rick Peterson, that will be coming in 2020 to the NTT IndyCar Series, powered by Chevrolet. Big changes afoot for what is coming to Arrow McLaren SP, leaving Honda after 8 years. Seeming change on the driver horizon as well, knowing that while James Hinchcliffe has 1 year left on his contract with Arrow Schmidt Peterson Motorsports, so much of what he does, both with the support of Honda Canada and also personal services contract with Honda in the television commercials that he stars in, could be very problematic for him to continue with a team that is now headed to the bow tie. Current leaders in the IndyCar Championship, Team Penske representing Chevrolet, winners of the majority of the races this year and the Indy 500. So, smart move for the team in terms of competitive opportunities with Chevrolet. Definitely, though, a lot of shakeups and ripples will be felt as a result of the move away from Honda. So, spoke with Zach for about 40 minutes, touched on the majority of topics of interest, why Arrow SPM instead of Andretti Autosport or others, the decisions possibly on drivers, what might happen there. Not much to offer. They did not mention who would or would not be driving for the team starting next year, so understandably, what wasn't mentioned in a press release, he's not going to reveal, although I love Zach, on my podcast. Robert Wickens is another angle to consider, and while it wasn't something that we got into here, it is known that McLaren and Arrow SPM will honor the commitment to Robert to field him in a car once he is ready to return from his injuries. That's a positive. Again, provided Robert wants to do so with the team using Chevrolet power. Spoke about Fernando Alonso, spoke about a variety of things. So if you've read all the news in the press releases, I'd be lying to you if I said that there was a ton of new things awaiting you here in our conversation. But I do believe it's important to hear from Zach and hear his thoughts and the reasoning behind some of the things that are happening and the thought processes that will go into how the team is managed, who will be involved there, and some of the things we look forward to learning here in the weeks and months ahead as more decisions are made on what Arrow McLaren SP will look like when it does emerge in 2020. All right, let's get going with our man Zach Brown, CEO of McLaren Racing, on what should be a very powerful organization at some point in the very near future in the NTT IndyCar Series. We've been hearing for a while coming out of May that there was definitely a strong desire for McLaren to come back in IndyCar. Was a while there we thought it might just be another return to the Indy 500 that coming next season. Not exactly sure how, but I had been hearing about that. You'd made some comments that, hey, we don't want folks' lasting memory to be May 2019. We know we are better. Walk us through just the general, not so much timeline, but just the process of, if we're going to come back, how should we come back? And if we come back, what form? Standalone team by ourselves, full-time, partner with somebody? Curious, because there's obviously a lot of decision-making that's gone on over the last couple of months.
Yeah, for sure. Let me kind of hit all of that, or as much of that as I can, not necessarily in the order in which you framed up those questions. I guess we'd start with, first and foremost, anything that we do cannot compromise our Formula One efforts. That is the the heart and soul of McLaren racing. And so now that we have, feel we're in a better place in our Formula One team, we certainly have a long way to go. But I'm liking what I'm seeing. I've got my leadership team in place with Andreas Seidel, my technical director, and James Key. Two new great drivers. Feel that our Formula One team has a strong foundation to move forward. So, in these decisions, timing and impact of the overall racing is kind of the first gate we need to get through.
And you've always been consistent in that, saying before we consider anything longer term, bigger picture for IndyCar, we have to get the Formula One team back on track. And for any of those who've watched Formula One this season and happen to be McLaren fans, I mean, honestly, you have to be happy to look at, you've created that reality to then allow you to consider IndyCar having the first pillar in place.
Correct. So while still a lot of work ahead of us, we're racers. We want to go racing. It's in racing, as you know, you go for the gap. So felt there was an opportunity here. So that was kind of the first thing, is making sure we're in a good place, headed the right direction in Formula One. Then, IndyCar has, we've got great history in it. North America is a very important market to a lot of our key stakeholders, being our sponsor partners, our automotive business, our technology business. It's a commercial differentiator for us in the Formula One pit lane. I think this year at Indy proved out for us that from a commercial point of view, we were successful in not just the amount of partners that we brought in, but it was our Formula One partners supporting IndyCar, such as BAT and Dell. We then developed new partnerships, Arrow Electronics, which then followed us from IndyCar to Formula One, and then new partners to McLaren, AutoNation, ScanSource, MindMaze. So I think this year validated for us that from a business point of view, that indeed being in IndyCar was good for business, and not just good for IndyCar, good for McLaren Group and our businesses, and good for our Formula One team. So we've never, that validated that, and we've never wavered from our desire to be in IndyCar for those reasons. What we did learn, I learned this year, was if you're going to do IndyCar and the Indy 500, you better be fully committed. It is too difficult of a championship. Great teams, great drivers, and to go about it, in a part-time manner, is I think too tall of an order for any racing team. And so when I look back and see the mistakes that we made, it's pretty clear, and it was more than one. So, I always say in life, mistakes are okay. Just learn from them and don't make the same mistake twice. So it was clear either we needed to be all in or don't do it. And while it was pretty bad experience on a personal and professional level this year, I don't think you can, if you're going to be a racer, you're going to win, you're going to lose, you're going to crash. And if when you crash, you quit, then you probably shouldn't be in motor racing. And so while the natural tendency when you have a big public failure like that is to hold your head pretty low, you got to get back on that horse. And so the way we're going to attack our IndyCar proposition, I feel much more comfortable with, confident with. It's a proper long-term commitment to the sport. And, everyone is very excited.
Know that of the options being explored, obviously you and the Andretti team, you and Michael Andretti, I should say, have a great relationship on a separate front with your co-effort down under in the Australian Supercar Series, but just business to business, Andretti Autosport and McLaren Racing obviously came together, had great success in 2017 at the Indy 500. Know that obviously there would have been conversations saying, hey, could this be possible if we're talking about working together in 2020? The arrangement you've come to, though, with the currently known as Arrow Schmidt Peterson Motorsports team, curious if you can share thoughts on that partnership that's coming forth here with Arrow, McLaren, Racing SP and such, and also the style, Zach, because that's the part that I find most interesting. Some fans might have thought, oh, well, McLaren's going to buy and basically overwrite a team, or going to do something that is true ownership stake. But again, from everything I understand, this is more of a technical partnership, a technical union than true we have our name on, quote, ownership papers involved. A, is that accurate? And B, can you share, if it is accurate, the mindset behind that, which might be different from what some people might have expected?
Yeah, I think, one, obviously don't want to get into the finer details of the business arrangement. What I can say is it's a long-term commitment that can evolve over time. We're investing substantial monies in the team. And, if I look at how we raced in 2017, while that was a fantastic experience, it didn't have much McLaren DNA in it. And when I look at how we raced in 2019, while it had a tremendous amount of us in it, because it was it was our racing team that was assembled and put together, that secret sauce didn't work successfully. And so what opportunity we found with SPM was kind of a hybrid of the two, where we've made a long-term commitment. We're partners in how we go racing. The ownership stake remains owned by Sam Schmidt and Rick Peterson, but it's the start of something that has deeper roots in it. And I think, why SPM? A variety of reasons. One, we think we can help take their team, now our team, from an occasional winner to a front runner. Won't happen overnight, but I think the ingredients are there. I think the McLaren brand will help in recruiting the necessary people, whether those people are drivers or technicians, et cetera, and bring more depth to the team. I think it's got a great foundation that I think will just make stronger. I think we can. Arrow Electronics played a critical, pivotal role in bringing us together. I would say they were as much an architect of this marriage as anyone. They're partnering with us in Formula One. They're the title sponsor of the IndyCar team, that we do business with them in our automotive technology and racing business. So they're really integrated into McLaren as a business partner. I have personally, of course, known John Flack for over a dozen years when he was my president at JMI.
There's some company he might have worked for I've heard of before. Yeah, something along those lines.
Exactly. And so, I'm very confident in John Flack as an operator. I know how he operates. He runs a good business. Sam's a racer. Rick's a racer. Taylor. So as I look inside their organization, I'm very happy with the foundations. I anticipate us incrementally supporting them. I would not expect to see much change within the existing racing team. What I think you'll see is some additional new faces like Jill DeFerrin, who on behalf of McLaren will lead our IndyCar efforts. So I think we'll take them over time to have the resources and a deeper bench, if you'd like, by adding some McLaren know-how from back in England, some technologies. Obviously, developing an IndyCar is much more restrictive than Formula One, but we think there's areas that we can assist. And so that, that brings everything together. And then, I think Chevrolet is also being a key part in this. And I feel SPM think Chevrolet can help take them to the next level with the commitment that they're collectively making to the new Arrow McLaren Racing SP team.
Those are the two topics I wanted to touch on next, Zach, being the team and Gilles and also Chevy. So I'll go in that order. So when Gilles, after his driving days, was running his own racing team here in IndyCar, also knowing that started out in sports cars, he had the late, great, and beloved John Ando Anderson really as his, call it his general manager, his man on the floor, making things happen. Gilles was very hands-on, but also a big picture guy. But what made that team work was having Ando being the man there, truly making sure everything happened correctly, applying decades of experience. How do you foresee, knowing that SPM currently has the awesome young Taylor Kyle growing into general manager position, talking just operationally, not necessarily the John Flack big picture level, but operationally, how do you and SPM foresee someone like Gilles coming in and complementing? I know that McLaren's been very direct in saying we're not diverting people from, mechanics, crew, engineers, whatnot, from F1. F1 is still in isolation. We'll be adding folks, but they will be dedicated to help on this IndyCar program. Just curious how you see the blending of two families, because that, as you well know, is ripe for either boom, big success, or sometimes it can lead to a lingering challenge to make two new families really find that sweet competitive spot.
100%. So I think a lot of that comes down to individual personalities. And so, if we talk about Gilles here for a moment, Gilles is a big picture race winner. He's raced with the best team in IndyCar, and as far as I'm concerned, one of the best racing teams in the world. So obviously Penske Racing. And, if I look at, I give Gilles a lot of credit for, what we've achieved this winter in Formula One. And Gilles came in to our Formula One team as the new guy, and not even with a Formula One track record like he has in IndyCar. And if I look at the way Gilles settled in, lowered into the racing team, he's a team player. He's thoughtful. He's big picture. He's not a bull in a china shop. He has opinions, but he's very thoughtful in how he operates with people. And I think he's been a big contributor to the McLaren turnaround, if you want to call it as such. And so when I looked at the individuals, Sam, specifically Taylor, Gilles and Taylor are hit it off immediately. And so I think if you get the wrong personality mix, that's when you can have a mess on your hands. And when I look at Gilles, one of his greatest strengths are, not many people, as can walk up and down a pit lane and kind of get high marks from everyone. Show me someone who doesn't like Gilles DeFerrin, and that's the first time I will have met someone.
There are a few people I love messing with more than Gilles DeFerrin. Yeah, absolutely love the guy.
So I think he and Taylor are the right ingredients to put together to do some magic stuff, as opposed to, when we get these two guys in the room, trouble's gonna brew. So I think that's one of Gilles' great strengths, is I think he will settle in. He will work very closely with Taylor, and I think he'll obviously add a lot of value from his experience in winning an IndyCar. He knows what great looks like, but then he also has all the knowledge of what's going inside McLaren, so he'll know where McLaren can, best help and support and add an incremental benefit to the IndyCar team. So I couldn't think of a better person to land inside an organization. And on the other side, what I've seen out of Taylor is a very professional, very thoughtful, very buttoned up leader of a race team who is very open-minded. Our conversations with him, he knows there's areas that the race team can improve, and he's embracing that, because also if you had the wrong personality on that side, that could not be a healthy mix. So I couldn't be happier looking at the combination of Taylor and Gilles, and knowing that those two are going to be the primary, certainly technical leaders and collaborators. I think we've got a great, 1-2 punch there.
A little bit of a tougher question to follow. Last question on the team side, Zach. Like you, I'm a huge, huge fan of Taylor, knowing that, in his rise up the organization, placed into the general manager role this season. I think he has been doing an excellent job. Also think that he has been in a position of, in many ways, inheriting some things that maybe given more time on his own, without any McLaren involvement, the team would be turning itself around next year. You are coming into a team, though, that if I'm going to disqualify among IndyCar the Foyt team. They've been in a very bad way competitively for a while. But looking at the current Arrow SPM program, I would have to say the most underperforming team in the paddock based on effort and expectation, knowing that there was a sizable investment, again, from Arrow actually joining now with their name as a part of the title of the team. It's been a great effort to try and take the team further up the paddock this year. Looks like, there's still some areas possibly on the engineering side, maybe on the R&D side coming into the 2019 season that have been off a little bit. Is that an area where you think right away, with Gilles' vast technical expertise and know-how, do you think that might be the area that of all the learning how to work together and form a union aspects on the plate, do you think that might be an area of priority and expertise where McLaren might be able to help raise every aspect of this new union coming out in 2020?
I think it's too early to tell. I think it would be unfair for me to say we have all the answers sitting here, and also I don't think it would be appropriate for me to publicly comment on areas in which we think they may be slightly deficient, because the results are the results. So, clearly, to your point, they're not winning races often, so there is room for improvement, but I think I'd want to let us settle in and better understand where we think we can make the greatest contribution. But I think, we've identified enough areas that we think we can make a good contribution. And I think with how competitive IndyCar racing is, these guys had a second place in Detroit. Hinch is just coming off a podium. They're not that far off from where they need to be, right? The series is that competitive. So yep. I don't think, I think this is about incremental gains in areas as opposed to, you got to turn something on its head.
Fair point. And we're talking, if the team as a whole found a 1.5 tenths, their season would be completely different. And again, I'm just speaking in generalisms, but with the acquisition of 1/10, 2/10 of a second per lap, the team's in a completely different place. Let's shift, Zach, to close.
Totally.
On manufacturer and also the driver front, because obviously drivers were not mentioned in the release here, but certainly going to be the main point of intrigue, I think, for many fans in the coming weeks and months ahead. But let's start with Chevy. Having been with Honda for the debut with Andretti in 2017, having been with Chevy this year during the month of May, some really intriguing stuff here. If we're talking the competitive balance I know our friends at the Bowtie have wanted. So not speaking ill of any of their teams other than outside of Penske and IndyCar, we just know that when we look at the win column this year, there's a heck of a lot of Penske winning on behalf of the Bowtie, leading the championship right now with Newgarden. They also hold third place with Pagenaud, Powers in fifth, etc. But there is a fairly significant gap among the Chevy stable that if you're not Penske, there's not a lot of air support and firepower for the brand in terms of getting to victory lane. The thought of what we have now in Arrow McLaren SP representing Chevrolet in terms of competitive balance, in terms of potential. If I'm Jim Campbell at GM, if I'm Mark Kent, I'm doing a happy dance because I just helped to welcome a team, I think, with great potential to add more victories on an annual basis. Share some thoughts about this partnership with Chevy and how what you've put together, Zach, could very well really help strengthen Chevy's overall imprint on IndyCar year by year going forward.
Yeah, so we are super excited to be with Chevy. They made it very clear really a couple of years ago, I think when we were in Detroit, it feels like a couple of years ago, that they were McLaren fans. Jim Campbell, Mark Royce, Mark Kent, and the conversations when we told them of our desire to get into IndyCar, they made it real clear, if McLaren's coming IndyCar racing, let us know. We'd love to partner with McLaren. And they were outstanding at Indianapolis this year. I think they're a great company and bunch of racers. I love their Le Mans program. And I think, you're right when you kind of go down the win column. Penske puts the majority of the Chevy wins on the board. And so, while not wanting to speak on behalf of Chevy, I think, clearly the more competitive teams they have, the better off they are. I think the IndyCar is such a competitive series that, it seems to, ebb and flow and sometimes be, one stronger at Indy than another, one stronger on road courses than another. Their commitment is strong. I think to be in the same equipment as Roger Penske is a great place to be, because Roger's always going to make sure he's got the best equipment or is pushing to have the best equipment. So I think you're in safe hands when you've got the same power unit in the back of your car that as Roger Penske has, and they've been great to work with, and they're racers. And so I spend time with them when I go see them in Le Mans or IndyCar races. And so I think it's a great partnership. We're super excited. They've also been a key element of making this happen. Without the support that they've given us, this deal wouldn't have come together. So I think between Arrow and Chevy, those two need a big shout out for this marriage coming together.
Let's close on driver, Zach. So again, in the announcement, nothing mentioned. We have read, and I think we can safely state there's been fairly well understood interest in a certain young badass Californian by the name of Colton Herta. We look at some other drivers out there. I know that Felipe Nasr just recently did a test with SPM. There are some great young drivers we could look at maybe in the McLaren pipeline. Latifi stands out. We've got two drivers currently competing for the team in James Hinchcliffe and Marcus Ericsson. Again, I'd love for you to tell us everything and have all kinds of breaking news here. What can you share with us, at least on the process of identifying who might drive for you next year? And I think there could be, I believe Hinch might have one more year with his contract and whatnot. I don't know how easy it is. I know using Chevy power certainly took some great minds to make that happen. Part of me wonders if whatever ends up being the 2020 Arrow McLaren SP driver lineup might take some similar strategery to pull that off as well. But what can you share with us on mindset, who we might see, or if you can talk about any of that?
Well, definitely. So, my initial recommendation, unfortunately, everyone shot down. They thought I was too old and not fit enough anymore. So I'm no longer in the consideration set.
Now, see, I can say this. I'm not one of many, but I am I'm a reporter now. But I've seen Zach Brown, Formula Atlantic, and I remember when you were a race car driver, man. I saw it. I was a young mechanic then too. But I can actually say, there was a time that wouldn't have been a crazy thing to consider.
It was a long, long time ago.
Many pounds ago, in my case. Yes.
Exactly. So, the situation, and you're right, is James Hinchcliffe is on the contract. So I think that, answers that question. And then Marcus Ericsson is new to IndyCar. As we now get into our review of what do we want to do together, drivers, driver, and long-term thinking, even beyond 20, is arguably one of, if not the most important element of a successful IndyCar team. I think it's as much of a, which I think is exciting, drivers championship as it is a team championship, where if you get into Formula One, as Fernando said some time ago, it's turned into a constructor championship first. And I think when you look at the race results, it kind of supports that. So drivers will be something that we look at closely, and something that we look at with a short and long-term view. And so no decisions have been made yet. You'll see Gilles and a few other people from McLaren joining the last couple IndyCar races, just as SPM, Taylor and John visited us in Hungary. And that's certainly near the top of the list of, what's that look like in the future. And then, of course, experience is very important. And, having a long runway. If you look at what we did in Formula One, we have two young drivers, one rookie, one quite experienced, and that's working really well, Lando and Carlos. So not saying that's exactly the same approach we'll take, but I think it gives you a sense of the type of thinking that we think makes sense. And then, of course, we're going to do this very hand in hand with Sam. Drivers is something he knows a lot about. And so, moving forward, our decisions are not McLaren decisions or SPM decisions. They're group decisions. We're now one team, but I think Sam would concur with everything that I've said here to you today.
Fernando Alonso, as I've read many fans say, they assume that if McLaren does come to IndyCar full time, that would equate our favorite two-time Formula One world champion Spaniard being part of the program. I think folks have gotten a feel in the last month or two. Fernando's been the, hey, if I'm interested, I'll do it. If I'm not, I won't. But don't sign me up for anything full-time in your mind, because I'm not doing it. Curious where, and why don't we close on good old Fernando, if and where he might be in your general mental register, whether it's maybe a full-time opportunity or if, I don't know, a third car for the Indy 500, which SPM does traditionally. If he has a desire, that could be a door you keep open. Just curious where you factor good old fast effing Fernando into this equation.
Well, the door is always open for Fernando. He's part of the family. He's a contracted McLaren driver. And, for the first time in a long time, he doesn't have a full racing calendar ahead of him. And he's obviously well aware of what we're doing here. And I'll be seeing him later in the year, and we'll be discussing our plans and his plans, and we'll see if those converge at any point.
10-4. Well, we're going to have to do some keep your eyes tuned on further announcements in terms of who will be driving for the team. A lot of fascinating things to consider there on that front. I don't know, Zach, how do you think this is going to be received once Gilles maybe rocks up in Pocono and gets to see some of the folks that were just viewing him as friendly Gilles? Now they need to look at him as rival, competitor Gilles. Nope, you're not coming and getting your coffee here, pal. I don't know. What do you think? Because you guys aren't coming to be nice. You're nice people, but you're not coming to be nice. How do you think this is going to go down?
I think, first and foremost, I think the fans, which are the most important part, of the sport are going to be excited. The IndyCar community are a bunch of racers, and I think they'll be excited. They've been so embracing of both of our Indy 500 entries, so I think we'll get a warm reception from the fan base, which is quite exciting because they're the ones who really make this sport go round and round. And then, of course, we've got a lot of great friends in pit lane. Jill does, I do, and I think those friendships will remain. But when the green flag drops, we'll all be competitors. But I'm looking forward to that.
And that was our friend Zach Brown, McLaren Racing CEO, with plenty of thoughts and background approaches to what's coming here with Arrow McLaren SP in 2020. If this is your first chance listening to the Marshall Pruett Podcast, we do have a somewhat new, there's a little bit of new website smell left over on marshallpruettpodcast.com. All 600 plus episodes are there waiting for you. We've broken them into some fairly simple categories: Week in IndyCar, Week in Sports Car, Inside the Sports Car Paddock, our 3 standard weekly shows, then a variety of other goodies, catching up with episodes, my racing life and careers. Also do a lot of audio features, in-car racing audio and ambient audio. So got all that. Little magnifying glass in the top right of the site if you want to type in a variety of keywords. Lots of stuff to look for there. So if you get a chance, marshallpruettpodcast.com, and also ways for you to subscribe. Once again, thank you to Cooper Tires. Thank you to the Justice Brothers, and thank you for listening.